Here we've got gasket making. I initially took some pipe, EMT, and sharpened it, but it turns out it's not the right diameter. Stamping them out, if you can make a tool, is a lot faster than this method. You can see all the holes where I've worked hard on making these parts. Now I also have some black, and I have, it's easier to cut. This is a lot softer. Now they're both 0.62 or a 1/16 of an inch. So let me show you. This is basically just a giant drill press. So you lay a socket on there, and you center it under your chuck, and you put a little pressure on it, lock it down. Now, let's see, let me make sure it's nice and level. Yeah, it's pretty level. Okay, so you lock it down, and you compress this just a little bit. Then you take a razor blade. You can try a number 11 X-Acto. I don't have a sharp one, but here's what I do know. You pretty much got to keep the backbone of this blade up against the socket. You have to have it out just a tiny bit. The problem is with an X-Acto is the handle's so long, there's just almost no way. You might be able to, but you got to keep it down and tight. So this might work if you have a sharp one. I just don't know where my extra blades are, but I've cut easily a dozen, and the last couple were with this razor blade. The other one, that blade still feels sharp, but I did 10 of them and I thought I better change it because I was having some failures. So what you do, and I'm not going to do the whole thing over because it just takes forever, but you take your razor blade and you work it around nice and gentle. Make sure you keep see the blade, the tip of the blade is straight down. You want that corner straight down. You don't want it like this or like that. You want it straight down in the material, and then pull the backbone of your blade out just a tiny bit, like less than an eighth. And then you work your way all the way around this, and you mark it, or you've cut it, right? Then what you do, which I can show you an example of here, is you pull this out, and you'll have a little piece like that sitting there, right? Except it would be over here. So you pull this out of the way, and then you take your next size socket up and you put it right over top of it. Now the mistake I made on this orange silicone is I was using a red, these are whiteboard or whiteboard markers. It's so close to the same color I couldn't see the mark very well. So I went with your standard Sharpie. If you have a different color whiteboard marker, I highly recommend it because it's temporary, and that matters. This is fairly temporary, but this socket's going to be all marked up, but that's alright. So what you do now is once you get it where you think it's centered, you clamp it down, you don't cut it, you take your marker and you walk all the way around, tight up against the socket. You make what this looks like here. See, it's all colored in, and then you lift it up, and then you'll see if you're off center or not. It'll look something like this. Like if that's perfectly centered, you'll see the mark you made is off center in one direction. So then you move this over in that direction, clamp it down, and mark it again. Now what I was doing with the whiteboard markers, you can see from all the marker on this paper towel, is I'd wipe it off as good as I could, go around it again and look. Now once you get it right, you have a nice tight circle sitting there. You can just drop your socket right back on it, clamp it down, and cut it out. Now you'll end up with that one's actually pretty good. This one, you see it's off by quite a bit. Well, that happens a lot, just how it goes. Some other flaws, especially when you cut the very inside, because you have a tendency, let's see, where's my small socket? When you're doing the inside, you have a tendency, the failure is to cut across across the path of your gasket. You tend to slice it over, and that's a drag. That's a serious drag. So cutting the inside one has to be the most perfect, because you put a great big old gouge across your gasket, you've just junked it. Don't try and save it. Move on to another piece of material. This is 8 inches square. It took me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 7th try I got it right. Now the black stuff was a lot easier. It's a lot harder, and I thought it was actually going to work better. They're both the same thickness, but there's a flaw, and I didn't know it until I made a couple of these. Let's see if we can. When you just put a little tension on it, there, you see up here all those a million cracks? Look at that. This shit's brand new. Can you guys see that? Let's see if I can. You see those cracks? I was like, holy crap. And that rubber is in great shape. I just can't imagine it cracking, but it did. So, here's another gasket for another part of the radiator tank. You don't really see it. Only where I nicked it, you'll see it crack a little. But yeah, it's starting to. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but right through here I can just barely see it cracking. And I thought, okay, well that's bullshit. If I had to do this all over again, I would definitely pick silicone. Here's why. The black, whatever type of rubber this is, because I don't know. I got it donated to me. It's either Buna N or one of those type. They're only good for 250 degrees Fahrenheit. This shit is good for 450. Now you know that sometimes your vehicle overheats. It'll hit 250, piece of cake. Now that's not the melting temperature of this black stuff, but it can degrade it. The stuff I took off this radiator, the factory rings of these gaskets, were absolutely crumbly. They just disintegrated, and I'll show you some of that in a minute. So anyway, this stuff is a lot stretchier and softer than this of the same thickness. But this cracking phenomenon is crap to me. Now, it might work okay. You know, I'm stretching it quite a bit, and maybe it's hard enough that it fails like that. So, you know, the silicone doesn't even think about cracking, but it's softer. Now, let's see. All right, let me take you over to the bench where I'm assembling this, and I'll show you some clues here that'll really help. I'll be right back. All right, here's the assembly bench, and you can see a couple of these. This was my test one. I nicked it really bad on the outside, so it might work, but I'm not going to take a chance. This is way too much work. This cap is external. It's out here, and if I screwed it up, I could, you know, do another one later. It just takes a giant freaking Allen wrench. Come on, baby, where are you? Jesus, I can't tell you what size that is. No, I can't tell you. But it's metric, and it fits in there dead perfect. You don't want to reef on these things putting them together, but I'll reuse this one for example here. Oh, here's one of the most important tips. I hope this will focus up close. But the threads don't go all the way down to this lip. They don't go all the way down. If you can see it, let me see if I got something I could point with here. This whole section down here is unthreaded. That's where the gasket sits. Now, when you're figuring out which socket to use, you want to measure that diameter and use a socket of that diameter, or just a tiny bit smaller, so this will fit in there tight. Let me show you what tight means. You gotta work it, let's see. You gotta work it in, see it'll overlap the threads. You don't care how tight it is around the threads, because this isn't going around the threads. Okay, now you can see it's dead flat all the way against this outer lip, right? You can see it's a little oversized. It's supposed to be. But you want it squeezing the inside diameter of this, that step I showed you, that where there's no threads, you know, you want this in there tight. This stuff is a little squishier than the factory black stuff was. So if it wants to walk out or anything, it's got to work a lot harder. So make sure it's a little undersized, maybe, Jesus, I don't know, 15 thousandths or something. And that really helps it fit in there good. So then, once you're done, you screw it on. Okay. And you refine it a little bit. I'm not doing it from the big end, I'm doing it from the little end on the Allen wrench. And it's not sticking out a lot. It didn't ooze out. It's in tight. That ain't coming loose, and that will seal. I mean, that's why I said maybe I could reuse this one, but it's got a big slice in it, and I wanted the extra thickness out here to help make it a little stronger, but it's working good. It's working real good. I'll show you the original. You see all the cracks in it? This thing is so brittle, if I try to open it, it'll just snap. This is, I'd call that fairly brittle, but let me show you really, really brittle. Okay. These are the gaskets from the other smaller ones that are for the tank. Where's my tank at? Oh, it's on the other. Alright, anyway, these are for the transmission tank here, and if you can see it, right here. They go on the inside only, so you don't really have much of a chance. Here's the other tank. They go on the inside, so you can't really change them once you put them together. Sorry the lighting's crap over here, it's just how it is. But these things are so brittle. They just snap into millions of pieces. So they're 30 years old. You kind of got to expect that. And that's kind of why I went with silicone. Now, the 8x8 sheet I got off of eBay for $5.13 shipped. But you know what I'd do if I did it over again? Try to get the same thing, a 1/16 thick, with reinforcement in it, and try that. Then it's not going to be so fluid and stretchy. It'll still be pretty soft, but I don't know. The only one I saw that was reinforced was 3/32, which is 50% thicker than a 1/16. I'm going to try this because this is what I got. The thickness of the factory one was about this. It was about a 1/16. Here's the new one they sent me for the bigger hole on the tank right over here. It's a lot thicker. It's 0.74 versus 0.62, which is a 1/16. God, I don't know if that'll focus or not, but I couldn't get the smaller gasket for the smaller outlet of the transmission cooler, so I made a couple of them. That one's a little rough, that one's a little off center, but I think they'll work really good. So I have to really decide, what do I want to do? This one had, I don't know, is that wall? I guess the walls are about the same width across. These are a little stiffer, but I'm not sure that's better. So anyway, this is the one I'm using, the one I had to buy. They were so cheap, 49 cents a piece, but they didn't have the smaller ones in stock. And they couldn't find them, and I couldn't find them, so time to make your own. Now, all the time I've spent fixing this radiator, yeah, 50 bucks off of eBay will save you a lot of time. My health isn't great, so I can't work on this very often. And I really enjoy doing it the old school way, you know. I used to do old radiators, rot them out, solder them back together. So this is neat. This is my first crimped together tank. So anyway, this one goes on this outer fitting, and if it leaks or I don't like it, I can unscrew it while it's still in the car and put another one in. So that one's okay. These two on the inside of this tank where the transmission line comes out, you know, you have to take the radiator apart again to do that. And that ain't going to happen. So I have to decide. I'll let you know whether I'm using the hard rubber ones. Well, all right. Let me go get the piece I don't have in front of me. I'll be right back.